Today, we're diving into a pretty radical idea, a blueprint for the future called Intent OS. The whole premise is that instead of just, reacting to change, we actually have the power to consciously architect our own reality. So let's explore how that might work.
Okay, so it all starts right here with this core idea: intent shapes reality. Now, this isn't just some nice-sounding philosophy, it's the absolute foundation for this entire system. It suggests that our collective, focused intention is the most powerful tool we have for building the future, way more powerful than any other resource.
And this builds right on top of that last point. See, if our intent is what shapes reality, then it only makes sense that the future belongs to the people who can get that intent aligned with themselves, with each other, and with the big currents of change. So what does that alignment actually look like?
Well, that brings us to our first section. We're not just talking about a new app or some new tech company here. We're talking about a completely new way of looking at how our reality works, with this idea of an Intent OS right at the center of it all.
So what is Intent OS, really? Think of it like an operating system, but for society itself. Right now, a lot of our systems run on old, outdated code. Things like legacy power structures or purely financial incentives. This idea suggests we upgrade the whole thing to run on a clear, stated intent. It's a pretty fundamental shift.
I know, it's a massive concept, right? But for any idea this big to be worth anything, it has to tackle real-world issues. It can't just be a theory. So you gotta ask, what specific problems is Intent OS actually designed to fix? The way it diagnoses the problem is broken down into these three core areas. First, it looks at what's currently limiting us, the artificial ceilings we've put on our own potential. Second, it zeroes in on where friction exists, where our systems are grinding against each other instead of working together. And third, it finds where we're missing alignment, where all our efforts are pulling in a million different directions instead of toward one common goal.
And this is a really crucial distinction to make. This isn't about trying to guess the next hot trend. It's about a deep, structured analysis of the systems we already have, seeing where they're fundamentally broken, and then mapping out the most logical, efficient, and aligned path forward. It's presented as a kind of structured evolution, not just wild guesswork.
So, we've got the philosophy down. Now let's actually get into the blueprint itself. We've talked a lot about the why, so let's dig into the how. How does someone actually use this framework?
Well, the system is set up with two different ways you can get involved. You can be an observer, someone who watches and understands how the future is taking shape, or you can step up and become an architect and actually help design it. Okay, first up is the observer role. It's called preview mode. Think of this as getting your hands on a map of the future, a detailed breakdown of how different parts of our world are probably going to be transformed.
And the scope here is, well, it's huge. Preview mode applies this Intent OS lens to pretty much everything: business, relationships, education, housing, health. Basically, any system that's fundamental to how we live our lives is on the table. Nothing is off limits.
But what if you don't just want to read the map? What if you want to help draw it? Well, that brings us to the second level: design the future. This is where you make the leap from just being an observer to becoming an architect.
And this comparison just illustrates the difference perfectly. In preview mode, you're the observer. You're given the map, you follow a guided tour, and you get to see what's on the horizon. But in Design the Future, you're the architect. You help draw the map, you can submit any topic you want to explore, and you actively co-create what comes next.
The key here really is the agency you're given. As an architect, you get to choose the exact focus. You pick the sector, you pinpoint the specific system, and you identify the exact friction point you want to solve. You are literally setting the agenda.
So all of this leads to the final and maybe the most important part of this whole thing: your invitation to get involved. This isn't just some concept to admire from a distance. It's a project that's meant to be built. So here's how you can get started.
Getting started is actually pretty straightforward. If you want to engage as an observer in preview mode, you're invited to comment on what you want to see analyzed next, share this with others, and follow along. But if you're ready to be an architect, you can head right over to the subscriber portal and submit your own topic for a full deep dive.
And in the end, it all comes back to this one idea. This is really the core message. It's a call to action, to shift from being passive, just waiting around to see what happens, to being active and taking responsibility for building the kind of world we actually want to live in. So we'll leave you with this thought. This is just the beginning. The real question isn't what will the future look like, but rather what role will you choose to play in creating it? How will you architect it?